Blessings. Welcome back. We're continuing our discussion. This is the second part in a short video series where we're talking about some rather deep things and some wonderful things that I have to share with you. In our last video, we're talking about the nature of conflict and empathy, and we'll continue with that a bit and incorporate some other things and how they relate. So before I really get into it, I want to talk about how I don't talk much. Never did. I'm not here because I like the sound of my own voice. Didn't talk as a kid either. I spent my entire life listening, watching, observing. I knew how to talk as a kid, as a young person. I could. I just didn't unless I absolutely had to. It's kind of who I am. And it's important on a couple of different levels. One is, of course, I'm not great at it. You know what they say, use it or lose it. I guess in some ways you kind of have to develop it in the first place. But listening does suit my character. And the fruits of listening have been wisdom. It's hard listening. Everyone hates it. It's work. You know, work. It's so much easier to ignore a different perspective than to consider it. I remember the first time I realized I had a problem, though, that I didn't talk much, I was a little kid. I was probably, 8 or 9 or something maybe. I was in church. And, it was after church, and, you sit around, you chit-chat with people, the grown-ups and stuff, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I just want to get the hell out of here, right? Kids hate church. It's dusty. You're wearing tight, uncomfortable clothes, probably. I don't know. You certainly were if you were raised like I was in a Dutch Christian Reformed church. Very uncomfortable, very nails on a chalkboard for kids. But anyway, it's after church, some churches, you have a potluck. You're going to chit-chat after church in the meeting rooms. Say hi to your neighbors, maybe. Well, it was time for a Midwest goodbye. My parents were chit-chatting with another couple in the church, and one of the ladies, I'm standing next to Ma and Pa. The lady leans down to me and says, "Hey, I got a couple of kids in the other room over there. They're playing. Why don't you go grab them so we can go home?" I thought, well, that's great. The only thing standing between me and getting the hell out of here is grabbing these other kids over there so Ma can take them home. So I go over there, and I couldn't say anything. I was so lacking in communication skills. I don't know if cat got your tongue or just couldn't, but I couldn't really talk. I couldn't communicate. But I realized at that point that I talked so little that I kind of had a problem with it. It was a real thing. So there's that. It's a real aspect of my character and personality is I don't talk a lot. But I do want to communicate this because hopefully I will be able to say this once and I'm not wasting my breath. I'd like to be heard with some respect and clarity. The fact that I'm not like everyone else, an empty can. Right? It didn't improve with age. Talking. When I grew up a bit, I used to wander the playground of school at lunchtime. I used to walk the fence line as far away from people as I could get. I used to walk the fence line and I'd just think. I'd think about philosophical stuff, I'd think about existential stuff, science stuff. I love science. I used to watch Bill Nye the Science Guy. Everybody loved that guy. Yeah, he's fun. You know, I was all into it. You know, I used to watch, you know, like the Nova channel, like the PBS. You know, there's always some guy on there talking about geology and volcanoes. You'd have like a volcanologist. It'd be like on one of the back channels of the TV. It'd be like Channel 54. You know, you'd get to like the NPR station. You know, that's what I grew up on. I love that kind of stuff. I liked learning about geology and science and watching Bill Nye the Science Guy. Later, you know, moved on to like Brian Cox, Neil Tyson. Good guys. I like Neil. Brian was a little weird. I think he went through a weird phase. Scientist guy, physicist. And, you know, he went through this phase where he kept talking about like the infinities of the universe, how vast it was, and he kept trying to explain to the public the staggering number of zeros that you would have to use in our earthly human units to calculate some of the vast distances of space. And he was always talking about billions and billions of zeros. But he's fun to listen to. He's got great knowledge. I was into science. I was into rocketry. I was into rocketry as a kid. Model rockets and Boy Scouts. You know, I'm not saying I was autistic. I'm not saying I was autistic. But there were signs. There were signs. Maybe that was the case. I got older and then I became a truck driver. I became a truck driver for 16 years. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I was a truck driver over the road. Saw the entire country, you know, it was great. Didn't have to talk to anybody. So I guess that worked out well for me. Suited me pretty well. Everybody has to find their niche and fill it. Is it niche or niche? I think it's niche, right? Is that like potato? Is that like milk and milk? Pillow and pellow? You know, I'll give you shit if you pronounce it milk or milk. I'll give you shit. But if you say pillow in my presence, that's it. That's the line. You're out. Pillow. We could debate that in the comments. We could get nasty about that one. It's fine. Gotta draw the line somewhere. We're talking about empathy here. I'm sharing with you my perspective. I'm sharing where I come from, how I was raised, parts of my take on spiritual matters. I'm sharing that with you because we're talking about empathy. Sharing the things you would see from our experience on the mystical, magical mountain from the last video. Remember that? Where we peered into the hearts and minds of every living person on the planet and what they think, how they were raised, what they believe in. Remember that? We meditated a little bit on that. Remember the takeaways? Do you remember the Webster's Dictionary of Empathy? Please repeat that. The ability to understand and share the feeling, thoughts, and experiences of another person from their perspective. It's the definition of it. Do you remember the question I asked? Does God have empathy? It doesn't matter to me if you're religious or not religious. I became an atheist, a very happy, comfortable atheist, by about the age of 25, 27, right in there. By 30, full atheist. It was good for me. It was healthy. I got a lot of the crap from early years of indoctrination out of my head, out of not good things that religion, Orthodox religion, can do to you. I asked if God had empathy. Now, if you're familiar with some of Western religions, there's the Old Testament, in which we don't really see a lot of empathy coming from this God character, okay? Flooding the earth, commanding that armies slaughter men, women, and children, and commit infanticide, slaughtering of babies. Not a lot of empathy in the Old Testament. But times were different then, weren't they? The whole bloody world was different then. The New Testament, a little bit different. We see this Jesus figure come onto the scene, a little bit different, a little more empathy from Jesus. He does some weird stuff though too. There was one instance, I believe in Matthew, where Jesus is traveling on his way to Jerusalem. Comes across a fig tree. Jesus was hungry. Sees this fig tree, he's traveling, wants a snack, sees this fig tree, it's got leaves on it, it's beautiful, wonderful. Goes over to this fig tree, there's no figs on it. Well, figs weren't even in season. It wasn't the season for figs. You'd figure that God incarnate, His infinite knowledge, might know that figs were not in season. But anyway, that did not stop Jesus from administering his wrath upon the fig tree. As the story goes, he destroys and curses the fig tree because when he came to it, it had not borne fruit for him. A little strange. Poor fig tree. Some of you might know where I'm going with this. A little hint. He's on his way from Bethany to Jerusalem. He's on a mission to cleanse the temple. His gripe was that although outwardly looking beautiful and full of leaves, the fig tree had no fruit to bear. And similarly was the case in the temple of Jerusalem at the time. where the Pharisees had done for themselves the same thing. Maybe it's a silly gripe I have with the state of the world. Apparently it's not in season to bear forth the blessings of spiritual fruits. We should be. You know, we've got so much access to communication now. We're so free. We can say what we want. We can communicate and connect with each other as much as we want. And what are we doing? Pointing fingers. We're polarized, pitted against each other. We got the propaganda machines pumping 24 hours a day, telling you what to be pissed about, how it's the other person's fault, the other side's fault. Conflict. What do you call that? Flood the zone. Everybody's distracted. Nobody can focus. You know, where you put your energy and your focus matters. It really does. It changes things. When you focus just a little bit on some of the things that are important. You know, I think it was the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus instructed people to love your enemies. You know that it's easy to love someone that loves you back, but your enemies, you're also commanded to love. We're also commanded to love thy neighbor. Won't you be my neighbor? Mr. Rogers, smart man, liked trains, always well dressed. Love your neighbors, love your enemies. We're talking about empathy. There are some Gnostic Gospels. Gnostic meaning gnosis, know thyself. One such book is Thomas, Gospel of Thomas. Now, some debate whether Thomas was written before or after the other four, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And depending on your belief of when each was written might determine how much stock you put into Thomas. But it does teach in there that the truth and the light is inside you and outside of you and everywhere and under every stone and in every board and everything in the entire world, everywhere. The light of truth is everywhere, and it is in you. And to know thyself is to know the Spirit. There's no need to get lost in the weeds, so to speak, but to anchor yourself to the Spirit, that the living truth may be brought forth through you. There's There's no need to look to the sky for the heavens to one day descend upon you, that the kingdom of God will come, but that it's already here. People don't see it. There's one passage in Thomas that reads, "If your leaders say to you, 'Look, the kingdom is in heaven,' then the birds of heaven will precede you. If they say to you, 'Look, it is in the sea,' then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside you and outside you. When you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will understand that you and we are children of the living Father. But if you do not know yourself, you will dwell in poverty, and you are poverty.